child support is a trap.
Becoming a mother is seen as a liability.
First it was periods and now it's maternity leave.
Being a mother is the worst decision a woman can make in this day and age, and yes, I know. Bringing a life into this planet is the most noble and the highest honor thing that you can ever do. And that would be in an ideal world, but we don't live in such a world. And the reality of the matter is a lot of our societies treat mothers as nuisances and liabilities. My first realization of this was when I was working for a French CEO who obviously comes from a country that is considered first world, therefore the most civilized, and yet this man had the nerve to say that women deserve to be paid less because they go on maternity leave. This was of course perplexing, but the more I read about it, the more I actually saw that this was something that was happening to many women. And when it comes to the work context or economic context, it's called motherhood penalty. Motherhood penalty is a phenomenon where women's pay decreases the moment they become mothers. Like the fact that your salary can change just because you decided to become a mother, but that doesn't happen when men decide to become fathers, is absolutely astonishing. Yes, there's a lot of research about this actually. It's even more shocking that in some instances when men become fathers, they actually get promotions and higher salaries because now they have a family. And this idea of women being treated as a liability, especially in the work ecosystem, is because the way work has been structured in our society, it assumes that human beings are going to work as robots. You're supposed to be productive for a certain amount of hours in a day without getting exhausted, without getting sick. And in fact, in many companies, the number of leave days that you've been given is just for official purposes. It's just because the law requires employers to provide leave days, but the expectation is that you as the perfect employee is never going to take leave days. You're supposed to show your commitment to your company and work day in, day out. In fact, if you're the kind of person that takes their leave days, you're going to start hearing comments about how you are unserious with work, how you are not supporting the team, just because you're taking the leave days that you have been allocated. And this is the kind of mentality that has been pushing back on period leave for women. There are some people, actually both men and women, who think that this is favoring women, that this is some sort of discrimination against men. And I find this incredibly fascinating because periods are not a choice for women. It's not something that asks for permission before arriving at your doorstep. This is biological and it affects women in all ways, mentally, psychologically, physically, and even financially, because women have to continuously buy sanitary products that are increasingly getting expensive because they are taxed in many countries. And also, as research continuously shows, these sanitary products are slowly poisoning our bodies because they're not made with the most safe materials, because again, the companies that are producing them want to make the most amount of profit from them. And it is this combination of factors that make periods a total nightmare for many women, because they are accompanied by abnormal pain, which was recently equated to having a heart attack. And it's all because women are forced to live in a world that has been designed by men for men. But as a woman, you're required to just take it. You're required to just be grateful that you're actually getting a chance to be at a workplace, even though it is actually slowly killing you. It is a fact that workplaces were designed by men for men, and when women started getting into the workforce, they were just forced to follow things as they are, not become a problem, not become difficult. And this basically means that women are forced to follow an unnatural way of life. Basically, for many men, they have a 24-hour clock. They wake up in the morning, they have the most energy, and in the evening their energy has depleted, and that is how the cycle goes on day in, day out for the rest of their lives. But women are not wired like that biologically. This is not something made up. Women follow a 28-day cycle, and this basically means that most times for many women, the first 2 weeks of their 28-day cycle, they have the most energy, they can be the most productive. In fact, you can do 3 months worth of work in just those 2 weeks. But the last 2 weeks of your cycle are the most nerve-wracking, most irritating. It necessitates that you take a lot of time to rest. But of course, a lot of people see this as being a liability. This is sort of too much for many employers, many people in the economic world. And that's why they're like, oh, you have to be grateful that you're being allowed into the workforce and follow the structure that's already there, or leave. Basically, women are given a choice between living an unnatural way of life that eventually causes a lot of sickness for them, or not have a job. And this is why we are seeing an increasing number in menstrual disorders and autoimmune diseases. And this actually gets worse when a woman becomes a mother and wants to maintain their career, because they become a double tragedy to these robot-loving employers.
First it was periods and now it's maternity leave.
Research shows that a lot of women in their late 20s and early 30s are continuously being denied promotions because they are potential mothers. They might end up having children, and that becomes a liability for the employer.
And who is going to pick up the work? Single women should carry the burden because this is a woman's issue.
Many employers think that maternity leaves are not good for their companies because they not only have to find a replacement during this leave, but they also have to train someone else who's going to pick up that work, and then that person is going to leave. So basically it's like a waste of resources. You are training someone only for them to leave, or because of a maternity leave, women are just causing problems for the company. And this is why you'll find that in many companies they will actually not promote women they consider to be of childbearing age. They leave you in the lowest position so that even if you leave, it's going to be easy to replace you with like an intern. It's also a sad reality that for many mothers, they find it very hard to get back into the workforce after taking a break to take care of their children, because they're considered unproductive, and when they get jobs they are offered lower salaries than the industry standard. And even as I've been reading up on this, what I find even more shocking is that single women who don't have children most often are given lower salaries because they don't have a family to support. But once these women become mothers, they are considered a liability, and that is like an excuse for them to also be given lower salaries. And it's even fascinating that when these women complain about these lower salaries, most of the time compared to the men who are in the same positions, they are told either accept it or just quit a job and go become the perfect mother to your children. But also when these men become fathers, when they have that fatherhood status, suddenly that becomes an excuse for them to get promotions and higher salaries.
Now you're a father, you have to provide for the family.
It's almost as if becoming a father is seen as an asset, but becoming a mother is seen as a liability. And this mistreatment of women in the workplace is exactly why we are seeing a rise in this interest in being a traditional woman, a stay-at-home mother, which isn't really as cookie cutter as it seems. This is a borrowed from the past alternative. Depending on a man financially to sufficiently provide for your children and your family, something that works in an idealized fantasy-like world, but it's nearly impossible in the world of today. Many young people today cannot afford to buy a house. Many young people are forced to take on multiple jobs, glamorized as side hustles, in order to be able to survive in the economic climate that we have. And most times these are actually young people without responsibilities. So what exactly is going to happen when you start having children? When you really look at it, this idea of being a traditional woman, stay-at-home wife or mother, how feasible is it for men to actually become the sole providers in this economic climate and a looming ecological crisis? Let's also not forget that a lot of companies are welcoming the idea of artificial intelligence because they want to replace human beings in the workplaces. They just don't want to create efficiency with these AI tools. They want to completely replace human beings. This is why we are seeing an increase in layoffs. If you've been paying attention to the news, that means that more people are going to increasingly lose their jobs. This idea of a job or employment as a safety net is a thing of the past. It doesn't work in this modern day and age. So really idealizing this idea of being a traditional woman or a stay-at-home mother is really like preparing a bed of thorns for yourself in this modern world. In addition, recent trends show that you are highly likely to end up being a single mother, and maybe that welcomes this idea of child support. Maybe the father of your child is going to support you financially because of child support. But there's also a rising trend in anti-child support amongst the men, because a lot of these men, unfortunately, they want to have kids but they don't want to be responsible for these children.
Child support is a trap. A real man doesn't pay child support.
They think that because as a woman you have your own job, there shouldn't be any need for child support, but at the same time you're being denied a job for being a mother. You're getting a lower salary for being a mother. So what's really going on here? This topic has been the object of my attention for quite a while now, and I find it incredibly fascinating that this is exactly how mothers are treated. It just seems, if you really look at it, that motherhood is one of the worst choices that a woman can make.